Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. We are pleased to be joined with fiction writer Tim Huguenin today as we're talking about his latest book, Little One. And Tim joins us from West Virginia via Wyoming and Tennessee. He grew up in a small town in the Allegheny Mountains of West Virginia. When he was not off exploring in the woods, he often locked himself in his room to read undisturbed. His love for the transporting power of fiction grew into a desire to create his own worlds and characters via the written page. He has a special love for the Appalachians, both the area and its people, and wants to see more literature come out of these magical hills. Some of his favorite authors include George Orwell, Tom Morrissey, Ted Dekker, Edgar Allan Poe, Stephen King, James Joyce, C.S. Lewis, and Joseph Heller. He loves to read and write in about any genre, although he recently tends to gravitate toward both horror and Appalachian literature, and many times a combination of the two. After a sojourn across the country, Tim is back home to West Virginia once again, and he currently lives in beautiful Pocahontas County with his wife. And we're pleased to welcome Tim Huguenin with us here today. Tim, good to see you. Welcome to Chapters. Nice to have you here.
Thanks a lot, Eliot. It's good to be here.
So I want to ask you a little bit about how all of this writing started for you. What got you interested in writing, and where did all this really get started for you?
My parents they still are big readers. They are always reading, and they kind of passed that on to me, I guess. And I had a pretty high reading level even from early age. I'm not a genius or anything, but I can't really remember what it feels like to not be able to read. You know what I mean? I guess I read a lot, and as a kid, I just kind of was like, I like to read, maybe I should write, and I want to make this cool stuff that makes me feel cool when I read it, I guess. Actually, I still have a short story that I wrote and illustrated for my dad in first or second grade called Tom and the One-Eyed Dragon. I had drawn all these pictures and wrote about this boy named Tom, which is probably not a coincidence that it's one letter removed from my name, Tim, But anyways, he put it in his office, and then when we moved to Tennessee when I was in college, he was going through his stuff and found it, so I scanned it. I still have it on my computer. But that's for the first thing that I have record of actually trying to write a piece of fiction. And I'm not confident it was first or second grade. It's one of the two, based on how poor my spelling and grammar skills are. And drawing skills, but I don't think the drawing's improved much.
Understand that totally. So, as a writer today, do you find it difficult to balance the writing and the reading time, or do you kind of write in spells and then read in spells, or do you do both at the same time? How does that work for you?
Well, I find it hard to really go to sleep. I usually read for an hour or so before bed, no matter what, and a lot of times I'll read during the day as well. It depends on kind of my work schedule and what jobs I'm doing. I've done a variety of different kinds of jobs, so it's always kind of a different schedule. But I do find it tough to. Sometimes I feel like I have so many books that I'm either reading for research or to try to just get more exposure within. There's so many different kinds of just writing and author just in the horror genre alone that I feel like I have so much homework to do, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I kind of feel like I almost don't get to read books for fun as much as I used to, because I was oh man, I need to read some Ligotti and really learn how he does this stuff, and I haven't read as much Lovecraft as everybody in the world has read already. So I'm trying to become more well read, and not just in horror, but all sorts of books. But I do love to read. I still love it. And as far as balancing reading and writing, I get super tunnel vision. So when I'm writing, I'll try to really focus on that. But I'll also read things that I hope will. When I was writing Little One, I was like, well, I know this is a ghost story, so I was reading ghost stories as I'm writing to kind of as a compass kind of thing. And right now I'm working on another book that, without giving too much away, it's I realized while I was writing it that has the structure of a vampire novel, even though there's no vampires in it, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So I was reading Salem's Lot and Carmilla as I was writing, and I would have written Dracula, but Salem's Lot took so long that by the time I was done with it in another book, I was done with the first draft. So, but yeah, I guess I don't know if that's answers your question very well, but I'd like to do both, and I guess the shorter answer is, even if I'm not writing or like focused on a writing project, or even if I am, I'm always reading. So
And I like the comment you made about writing for or reading for research and then reading just for pleasure, because there's really two different things. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're trying to read someone like a Stephen King or a Lovecraft, and you're trying to study that particular author in terms of their techniques, it's very different as opposed to just sitting down and reading this from start to finish because you're enjoying the story.
Yeah,
It's a totally different process,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you mentioned that point. So let's talk a little bit about Little One, and we'll come back to you as a writer here in just a little bit. As the story opens up, we're introduced to a pretty great character that we get to follow throughout the story. Her name is Kelsey Stone, and we meet her at the beginning of the book, and she is on a plane leaving Los Angeles. So why is she leaving Los Angeles, and where is she going?
Well, she found out that her birth parents, who she has not had contact with since she's been a very little girl, and whom she can't really even remember, she found out that they left their house in West Virginia, and obviously she had lived a little bit in West Virginia when she was a small child, but she doesn't remember much of her past, and so she really kind of has a lot of preconceptions, like any typical person that has not been spent time here. Even in the first chapter, it talks about her. It just mentions a conversation with the lawyer that had contacted her, where she says, should I bring a toothbrush, or would that be out of place? And so she does she's really resistant to kind of accepting her past and accepting this, but she goes back to see the house to maybe figure out if she needs to clean it up for to rent it out or sell it, and I think also subconsciously she's really searching for her past and who she was and who her parents were.
And we get a sense that she really doesn't want to leave Los Angeles in that first chapter. She's looking out, and she kind of talks about her itinerary. She's going to fly into Charleston, and then she realizes, but once I get to Charleston, I've still got a long way to go before I get to Elkins and that part of the state, which is over on the eastern side of the state for folks not familiar with the geographic region there. So she's got a lot of reservations about doing this, even though she, as you said, she feels compelled to do it. She still doesn't really want to. It's still really something that she is trying to avoid and trying to really not look forward to.
Right, yeah.
I want to ask you too, another character we meet. There's so many great characters in this story, but one that really caught my attention was James Pendleton, and he meets Kelsey right when she first arrives in West Virginia, and we learn that he's sort of the lawyer that's handling the family affairs. But he's not really your typical lawyer. Tell us a little bit about, what we typically think of when we read about lawyers, or if you say the word lawyer, all those images come into your mind of what a lawyer might be, but he doesn't fit that stereotype. Tell us a little bit about James Pendleton, who he is.
Well, right. He, have you ever seen, what I had in my mind was like a model for like Filson clothing. Have you heard of Filson? It's just like lumberjack type of stuff. And the reason I did that is really in a small town, people they don't have a lot of pretensions of dress. They just wear what they wear. And so I wanted him to really, he kind of wears his flannel and blue jeans kind of thing, but he's still very rugged, but very still clean at the same time. You can tell that he has money compared to the rest, compared to a lot of people, although a lot of people in the Davis and Canaan Valley area do have, it's not certain places, there are more poverty than others, but it's not that bad. A lot of people have vacation houses in Davis and things like that. But anyways, he has a really nice house. He's single, very ruggedly handsome and everything. So she's kind of, notices that, kind of has a crush, even though she doesn't want to. But he's kind of disarming, at the same time curious, because this isn't the kind of person you would expect when you think of a lawyer, like you said. He's just he looks like he is what he is, but well, I don't want to tell you the whole story, so
yeah. Don't give it too much away. That's right,
Right.
absolutely. But I wrote down one line that was really interesting that caught my attention. That where you write down he quote looks more like a lumberjack than a lawyer, and I
Yeah.
thought so. You're right. I get all those images of camouflage clothing and a big heavy beard and long hair, and not the typical presentation of a lawyer that we normally see. Something else that we learn as Kelsey kind of gets acquainted with the home and sort of settles in a little bit, some creepy things start happening to her. And one thing that I thought was really interesting is when she sort of sees a little bit of movement in an upstairs window. She's sort of kind of wandering around a little bit and getting herself acquainted with everything. What's going on there with that movement, and why does that intrigue Kelsey so much?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is her parents' old house, and as far as she knows, it's abandoned. So what is something moving in the house, right? And also, not being comfortable in the surroundings and knowing it's kind of in the woods, I guess the first thought I think anybody might think is like there must be an animal upstairs or something, like got in while everybody was not tending the house and so it made a nest. But I mean, I don't think I'm giving too much away by saying the house is haunted, right? But she just doesn't know that. And I think really a lot of people would be creeped out by that, but also probably would be in denial about it as well for a while. Like most people don't believe in ghosts. Or even if they do, you don't want to believe there's a ghost in your house. So her first thought is like, there's like some animals living here. She tries to find them and get them out, but she never gets any animals out of there. So it always seems like she's just kind of like, for a while, she's just like one step away from finding this whatever keeps moving things around and everything, but always just barely missing it and then getting distracted by something else.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's almost as soon as she gets close, something else happens that diverts her
Right.
attention. Something else I wanted to ask you about your book that I really liked is that we see points of view kind of alternate between characters. So at times we're kind of following Kelsey as she comes back to this house, but then other times we sort of step away from Kelsey and we get a different point of view. And one of the things I really liked was how we kind of see some of the story told from the ghost's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So we see it from Kelsey's end in terms of what she's noticing with the strange happenings in the house, but then we see on the opposite side how the ghost is reacting to her.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you wanted to do from the outset, is the multiple points of view, or did you just find it was easier to tell your story by sort of stepping outside of Kelsey's head and going somewhere else?
Well, I'm trying to remember. Usually I write everything pretty much in order, and once in a while I'll change it, after when I revise and everything, there's times when I'll change some things around. But I think that the first thing I wrote was that first part, that first perspective from the ghost's point of view, right before chapter 1. And I don't remember exactly. I think the actual story had been kind of percolating in my head for a while before I actually started to write down. So I kind of knew. I'm not really a very strict plotter by any means, but I'll kind of have a direction and certain things in the plot I'll have in my mind, and I'll start going from there. So I think when I sat down, for some reason the ghost's voice just really came to me, and I just went with that. And since I knew what I was trying to do with it, I didn't give a lot away about it, but I still had that perspective, and as I went, I kind of whatever felt like needed to be told next, and from which character, I would do that. And I think in the end, I ended up maybe adding in or changing some points of view a little bit, but not very much. And does that answer your question? I'm sure. I'm starting to actually forget what the question was.
Oh, that's okay. You did just fine. No, you did perfectly fine.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you about, something else too about something in Little One that was really great is, it's a very fast-paced story. There's a lot of crisp writing, really a lot of good imagery in the story. We get a real sense that this part of West Virginia is a place.
Mm-hmm.
how much of the setting and the house and the area is based on, kind of where you live now, and how much of it was made up? Or did you take, as we mentioned earlier, you lived in Wyoming for a while, lived in Tennessee for a while. Did you take some of the geographical highlights of those states and kind of mix it in with this? Or is this true sort of Elkin's eastern panhandle, eastern part of the state?
That it's pretty much all. I'll tell you this. I was actually living in Wyoming when I wrote the first draft of the book, and this is where I grew up in the Davis, Canaan, Elkins area. I actually grew up in Davis, but this takes place in Canaan, which is kind of just outside. Although there's moments in Davis and Thomason as well. But so part of it was me kind of writing about home in a way, although it was hard to really do that because I'm writing from a kind of an outsider's perspective who's resistant to that, to this being her home. And that's kind of how she changed a little bit in the book too. By the end, she comes to reconcile her past. But anyways, to get to the question, a lot of it I remembered from just having grown up there so much, and what I didn't remember, some people say like they have to like turn off the internet and write or they'll be too distracted. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I'm like going on like Google Maps and Street View all the time to remind myself of like where things were,
Right.
So I did a lot of that. There are some places that I kind of fudged a little bit just for the sake of the story. Like the location of that house, there's not actually a driveway where I in my mind had the house. I just like was on like a satellite thing. I'm like, I'll stick it there, but generally speaking, I mentioned a few locations in there that are still there, and I'm trying to think of anything I really like. It's really obvious that I fabricated, but it's all pretty. I mean, if you read this book and you go visit like Davis, like you'll recognize everything. And people have emailed me and said, either like I grew up in Davis or like I had a honeymoon in Canaan or something like, they had some connection to the area and they're like, I recognize all these places in your book and I love reading about that. It's pretty cool. So
very good. That's excellent. But this little one is not your first novel. You have published a novel before that. So tell us a little bit about that novel and what it's about, the one you wrote before.
Right.
One.
So my first one was When the Watcher Shakes. And it is also set in West Virginia. Well, I almost made a big mistake there. West Virginia, vaguely. Like, in the beginning of the book, it kind of says it's like in the woods in West Virginia somewhere, but there's no like specific actual place. Mm-hmm. It's about this kind of traveler that stumbles upon this like secret town that's like all walled off in the middle of the woods, and the people in the town. I tell people like it's set in West Virginia, but it's not really like that West Virginia-y, because even though I try to stay really true to all the geography and the ecology and everything, the people in this town are not like normal West Virginians. They've like hidden away from everyone, and so they have their own weird, strange culture. And and it's very. What comes to mind when you read it is it's like a cult. Except for without crazy, weird, burning sacrifices, you think. Mm-hmm. But I think even early on in the book, you see that in that little town's past, they did have some weird, crazy stuff. And as this guy kind of learns more of the town, he starts to realize that even though, he didn't necessarily know about the past of like how they burned people at the stake and everything like the Puritans did. He started to see that like the people in charge of this place, like they're not all they say they are, and there's something weird going on here.
Yeah, and they have a sort of a general distrust of him when John shows up. They're kind of wary of him. Here's this outsider coming in, and as a result of that, he has some questions. They have some questions about their past. And
they don't mix very well.
Yes, they don't. They certainly do not.
And a lot of that was, some people have asked me, like, did you base this off of certain people? Because people that know me know a lot about that know about some of the people I know, and they're like, is this person? I'm like, no. This book is about me, okay? Don't, like, go trying to figure out. There are some of my experience I've loosely based it off of, but really it's a lot about my journey it has a lot about my journey of faith in there, actually, because it deals with a lot of kind of way like religion can be used as a political device to control people rather than as a way to like know God and everything. And so there's a lot of religious things in that book, more so than in Little One. But I don't think that it's necessarily written only for Christians or that kind of thing. I think a lot of people can identify with that because so many people have seen that in Christianity and in all sorts of different religions and have experienced that perhaps. So.
Very good. You're also a multi-published short story writer of short fiction. Your most recent story was published in spring of 2017 called Animals, which was in Hello Horror Journal. So tell us a little bit about your short story career and what that's like for you. And do you like short fiction as much as you do the novel, or was this just sort of a platform to get you comfortable with writing a novel?
Well, I know that I would not be, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm like an amazing novelist or anything, but I definitely wouldn't have been what I am without having written and worked on short fiction. And I think that's true for a lot of writers. I mean, even short fiction, I think to most kind of your average reader, they might not be aware that it's really how most writers kind of train themselves and even become known. And now that I'm more like versed in just I have a lot of author friends and acquaintances, and I see like there's so much short fiction even being written still. But like in high school you think that like, oh well, like you read The Most Dangerous Game and like a few other short stories and like this is all like old stuff, and now all anybody writes is books, novels and things. But that's not true. But to answer your question about kind of, I don't know if you're asking about like Animals itself specifically. It's interesting because you and I were just both at the Lewisburg Literary Festival. I kind of had the seeds kind of for that story when I was at a writer's workshop in Lewisburg. I can't remember how many years ago, but Marie Manila was doing a little workshop, and through that workshop I kind of came up with the characters for that short story and wrote it, and then just recently kind of rewrote it and got it published in Hello Horror. But I love short fiction. I still read short fiction. I try to stay current with newer and like maybe lesser known short fiction writers. I mean, Stephen King, like he comes out. It's mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling how many books he's written, but just the amount of short fiction he's written as well. And but besides just like those A-list like kind of marquee names, like there's other people that I read that I really like. Michael Wehunt. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he writes some really good stuff. And then some still more popular but not as well known, Thomas Ligotti. I do not know how he just like. It's so original. I'm still I read his stuff and I was like, this is so good, and I wish I could write this kind of thing. And Robert Aikman, I don't know what is going on in his stories, but they're still creepy, Yeah. So.
and there is something about, I think, a short horror story that can still make the hair on your neck stand up.
Oh yeah, and in some ways, some writers believe that the horror genre is best in the short story form. I'm not sure if I totally agree with that, but I can definitely see how there's sometimes you can be more powerful with just a short story than with a whole novel.
Absolutely. So what is Tim Huguenin working on next? You sort of teased about this earlier in our interview, but what are you working on next? What's your next project?
All right. Well, I'm working on a draft of a novel that is set in southern West Virginia, actually a fictional town that I made up that's kind of I kind of base off of a few different places I've lived and kind of thrown in things that I need to, called Augustus Valley, West Virginia. And it is about a boy who lives with his mom. His dad ran out on him a long time ago. He doesn't really have a dad. And he's just kind of your average boy living in like a poor West Virginia former coal town that is kind of dead and everything, and his mom, has all these boyfriends that are no good, and he's always trying to protect her from them. Well, this doctor comes along to Augustus Valley, and a very strange man. He dresses kind of weird. He wears a top hat and everything, and has this nice gold pocket watch. Like nobody wears pocket watch. I know one person that has a pocket watch. And anyways, turns out, and I'm not. He comes as a doctor, but not a normal doctor. I don't know if you're familiar with the term animal magnetism, but it's kind of that old era when like hypnotism, mesmerism, and animal magnetism were all this like one big thing, and people were like, Edgar Allan Poe. Actually, I was inspired by a few Edgar Allan Poe stories. He was real interested in this and wrote a few stories on hypnotism, and so I was inspired by that. And anyways, it's about this doctor who claims to be healing people in Augustus Valley through the powers of hypnotism and animal magnetism, and the boy Dan, he's named Dan right now at least, Danny. He realizes this Dr. Schaefer character isn't like, everybody's in love with this guy, but I don't like him, and he's like he's like, I don't know, Mom, like, his mom has back problems, and she goes to him, and he's like, this guy's not good, so he's trying to convince his mom. He's trying to protect her from that. He's always trying to protect his mom, and while this is all going on, this Dr. Schaefer is slowly hypnotizing the whole town.
Very good. Interesting. Sounds very good. And timeline for that? When do you think you'll have it, at least the first draft, finished?
I have just finished a first draft, and I'm in the process of like starting revisions on it. Actually, my wife is reading it right now. It's always my first like go-to is like I'll write it, and then I'll like do a quick run through to fix just minor things. And I'll give it to my wife, and she'll read it and make comments, and then I'll take it back and just like see what all I need to fix.
Great.
So
always good to have a good beta reader. That's for sure.
Yeah, she's always my first.
So Tim, in our final moments with you today, if anyone wants to get in contact with you to talk to you more about your writing, or if they want to get a copy of Little One, or find out more about your other novel or your short fiction, how can they get in contact with you, and where can they get a copy of Little One?
All right. Well, I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, but I also have a website which can connect to all that stuff. It also has a contact form. It's tghuguenin.com, my first two initials of my last name, which I don't know if... Do you want me to spell that? Or
sure, yeah,
will they put it on?
Yes, but if you would, please.
So it's tghuguenin.com. And on there you'll find links to I have a blog on there, which I'm not great at being regular, but I try my best at blogging regularly. I have links. I have like pages on like Little One and When the Watcher Shakes have their own like page with little summary and links to Amazon and everything. You can find both those books on Amazon. You can actually find both those books here at Empire Books as well. And like I said, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm pretty sure there are links to at least my Twitter account and my Facebook page from my website as well.
Okay.
But if not, I mean, you put in my name and you'll find me.
Okay, very good. Tim Huguenin has been our guest today here on Chapters. We've been talking to him about his latest novel, Little One, set in West Virginia. It's a fantastic book, very captivating, very gripping, a great story that people who like to know about or learn more or read more about sort of the more suspicious, creepy, scary sides of West Virginia life will certainly enjoy the book. So Tim, congratulations on Little One, and we appreciate you coming on Chapters, and as you write more, we'll certainly have you back on more to talk about it. So thanks so much.
Yeah.
And we also want to take a moment to thank Christine Dargish and the staff and management of Empire Books and News for providing our on-site support and assistance today. We encourage you to stop by Empire Books and News and pick up a copy of Tim Huguenin's latest novel, Little One, right here at the bookstore. And we also want to remind you that many of the other author, editor, and publishers that have been featured on the program have their works for sale right here at Empire Books and News. So if you're looking for that, or whatever reading taste you're looking for to be satisfied, come down and talk to the staff here at Empire Books and News, and they can get you taken care of with whatever reading need that you might be wanting to satisfy. And if you'd like to reach out to the program, we've made that possible to you and for you through a variety of social media platforms. One of those is through our email address, and that's right here at the bottom of the screen. We do ask when you send email into the program, please let us know your name and where you're writing from so that we can keep track of that correspondence, and we appreciate those of you that have and continue to email us at the email address here at the bottom of the screen. If you're not an email user, but maybe you like to watch things on YouTube via the internet, we have a chapters page through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube, and that address is right here at the bottom of the screen also. When you type that into your search browser, just click on the chapters tab, and we've got all of our episodes archived for you there. You can go and watch them for the second or third time, leave comments in the comments fields, and interact with viewers of the program through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube. And if you're a Facebook user, we also have a chapters page on Facebook. All you need to do is go to facebook.com/chapters is the address to get there, and at the Facebook page we have more of our most recent author, editor, and publisher interviews archived for you there as well. So you can go on there, you can share those episodes, you can interact and comment with viewers of the program through Facebook as well. So if you like email, if you like YouTube, or you like Facebook, we've made it possible for you to stay in touch with the program through one of those social media platforms. And we know many of you have done that, and we appreciate that so much. So please keep those comments, feedbacks, and shares of the program coming. And that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.